Michael Torres had driven over 15,000 passengers in 7 years. He'd seen everything: drunk college kids, crying lovers, silent businessmen, chatty tourists. But none of them changed his life like the man who collapsed in his backseat at 11:47 p.m. on a cold November night. The man who looked like he owned nothing but carried everything. The man who would force Michael to choose between the life he desperately needed and the person he wanted to be. Some decisions take seconds. Some haunt you forever. This is the story of one ride that became a crossroads.
Quick pause. Before we continue, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe, because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing.
The notification pinged on Michael's phone at 11:43 p.m. He stared at it for a long moment, his thumb hovering over the decline button. 4 more minutes and he would have logged off, ended this brutal 14-hour shift, and driven his aching body home to a studio apartment in Queens. 4 more minutes and none of this would have happened. But he accepted. He always did. Michael Torres didn't have the luxury of turning down rides. At 43 years old, he was a man held together by debt and determination. His rideshare job wasn't a side hustle or a temporary gig between better opportunities. It was his lifeline. Every ping meant another $8, another $12, another tiny payment toward the mountain of bills that never stopped growing. His mother's cancer treatments, $3,400 a month after insurance. His daughter's college tuition, $2,100 a semester, and she was struggling, needed tutoring he couldn't afford. His rent, $1,850 for 450 square feet in a building where the heat barely worked. His car payment, $340, plus insurance, plus gas, plus maintenance. The math never worked. No matter how many hours he drove, how many shifts he pulled, the numbers never added up to anything but exhaustion and survival. He pulled up to the pickup location, a dark corner in the Bronx, near an abandoned lot where streetlights flickered like dying fireflies. The neighborhood had that 3 a.m. feeling even though it was barely midnight. Empty streets, suspicious shadows, the kind of silence that felt like held breath. A figure emerged from the darkness. Michael's first thought was that the man looked displaced, like someone had plucked him from a different decade and dropped him here without instructions. He was old, maybe 70, maybe older. Age showed differently on people who lived rough. His clothes were layered and filthy, a coat that might have been brown once, pants held up with rope, shoes that were more duct-taped than leather. His beard was wild and gray, his hair matted. The smell hit Michael even before the man opened the back door. Unwashed skin, old clothes, the particular funk of someone who slept in doorways. "St. Catherine's Hospital," the man said. His voice was rough but educated, the kind of voice that didn't match his appearance. "Please." Michael nodded and locked the doors once the man was inside. He'd learned that lesson the hard way years ago. The GPS said 23 minutes. Michael pulled into traffic and tried not to breathe too deeply. He'd installed an air freshener that morning, but it was useless against this. He cracked his window an inch. In the rearview mirror, he watched his passenger. The old man, Harold according to the ride app, sat rigid in the middle seat, clutching a battered canvas backpack against his chest like it was a child. His hands were shaking. Not the tremor of age or drugs, but something else. Fear, maybe, or pain. "You okay back there?" Michael asked, because even though he was tired and wanted to be home, he'd never quite lost the habit of caring. Harold nodded, but didn't speak. His breath was coming fast and shallow. In the greenish light from the dashboard, Michael could see sweat beading on his forehead despite the November cold. They drove through empty streets, past bodegas with metal shutters covered in graffiti, past bus stops where homeless people slept on benches, past the park where Michael sometimes ate lunch, sitting in his car between rides, rationing dollar menu sandwiches to save money. "Been low driving?" Harold asked suddenly. His voice was strained. 7 years. Long time to be behind the wheel. It's work. Honest work. Yes. Harold was quiet for a moment. Then, what would you do if you didn't have to drive anymore? Michael laughed, a short, bitter sound. That's a fantasy question. Humor me. Michael thought about it. When was the last time anyone had asked him what he wanted? I'd spend more time with my daughter. She's 19, sophomore at community college. Smart kid. I barely see her anymore. I'd take care of my mom properly. Get her the treatment she needs, not just what Medicaid covers. What's stopping you? Same thing that stops everyone. Money. Ah, money. Yes. They fell into silence again. Michael pulled onto the highway. The hospital was 15 minutes away now. He could see Harold in the rearview mirror, and something about the man's posture worried him. The rigidity had become a slump. The backpack was sliding from his grip. Hey, you sure you're okay? Michael asked. Harold didn't answer. Sir. The backpack fell to the floor. Harold's hand went to his chest. His face, visible in the passing streetlights, had gone gray. Shit! Michael slammed on his turn signal, checking his mirrors frantically. Sir, stay with me. He accelerated, weaving through late-night traffic. The hospital was 10 minutes away. Too far, way too far. Harold made a sound, half gasp, half groan. His body tilted sideways. Michael laid on his horn, running a red light. His heart was hammering. In 7 years of driving, he'd had drunk passengers, belligerent passengers, passengers who threw up or passed out or tried to run without paying. But he'd never had someone dying in his back seat. Come on, he muttered, more prayer than words. 6 minutes. 5. He pulled up to the emergency entrance with a screech of tires, already unbuckling, already shouting, Help! I need help! The next 10 minutes were chaos. Automatic doors sliding open, paramedics running out with a gurney, strong hands pulling Harold from the back seat, questions being shouted. What happened? How long? Any medications? Any allergies? I don't know, I kept saying. He's my passenger. I don't know anything. They wheeled Harold through the doors at a run. Michael stood there in the ambulance bay, hands shaking, adrenaline making his vision sharp and strange. A nurse approached him. Are you family? No, just his driver. Did he have any belongings? Michael turned back to his car. The back door was still open, and there, on the floor where Harold had dropped it, was the canvas backpack. He picked it up. It was heavier than he expected. Just this. Bring it to the intake desk. We'll keep it safe for him. Michael nodded and followed her inside, into the harsh fluorescent brightness of the ER waiting room. Michael stares at the contents of the backpack, and in that moment, he understands that his life has just split into two paths. The one where he does the right thing, and the one where he survives. The intake desk was chaos. Saturday night in a Bronx emergency room meant gunshot wounds and overdoses, domestic violence and chest pains, the full spectrum of human suffering processed by overworked staff who'd stopped being shocked by anything years ago. Michael waited 40 minutes just to talk to someone. The clerk was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and the patient weariness of someone who'd worked this job too long. You brought in Harold Chin? Is that his last name? Yeah, he collapsed in my car. She typed something into her computer. He's stable for now. Massive heart attack. They're working on him. She looked up. No emergency contact. No insurance card. It's an old ID from 2008. You know him? No, just picked him up for a ride. Wow, you probably saved his life getting him here so fast. She managed a tired smile. You can leave the bag. We'll inventory it and keep it secure. Michael set the backpack on the counter. He should have left then. Should have walked out, driven home, collapsed into bed, and let this strange night become just another story in his collection of weird rideshare tales. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the weight of the bag. Too heavy for someone who looked like they owned nothing. Maybe it was the way Harold had clutched it, that desperate whip. Maybe it was the question Harold had asked. What would you do if you didn't have to drive anymore? "Can I use your bathroom?" Michael asked. The clerk pointed down the hallway. "Past radiology, on your right." Michael picked up the backpack. "I'll bring this back in a minute. Just want to check if there's any emergency contact info inside. Might help you guys." "That's kind of you." She was already turning to the next person in line. Michael walked down the hallway, past radiology, past the bathroom. He found a quiet corner near a vending machine where he could sit down. His heart was beating too fast. His hands felt strange, numb, and hypersensitive at the same time. He unzipped the backpack. The first thing he saw was clothes, old jeans, a shirt, socks rolled together. Normal. Then a toothbrush and a plastic bag, a can of deodorant, a bar of soap. The possessions of someone who lived out of a backpack. But underneath, wrapped in a plastic garbage bag, was something else. Money. Michael's breath stopped. Not loose bills, not a wallet with a few 20s, bundled cash, stacks of $100 bills bound with rubber bands, wrapped carefully in Ziploc bags to keep them dry. His hands were shaking as he lifted out the first bundle, then another, then another. There had to be, he couldn't even estimate. 50,000? 100,000? More? His vision tunneled. The hospital sounds, beeping machines, overhead pages, crying children, faded to white noise. With that much money, he could pay off his mother's medical debt. She could get the experimental treatment her oncologist mentioned, the one that insurance called not medically necessary because it was too expensive. She could have a chance. With that much money, his daughter could transfer to a 4-year university, get the education she deserved, instead of piecing together credits at community college while working 2 part-time jobs. With that much money, he could sleep. God, what was the last time he'd slept more than 5 hours? What was the last time he didn't wake up with his jaw clenched from stress grinding his teeth all night? He looked down the hallway. No one was watching. No one knew he had this. Harold was unconscious, might not even survive the night. No family, no emergency contacts. Who would even miss this money? Michael's throat was tight. His eyes burned. He reached deeper into the bag. There had to be more. ID? Documents? Something to explain this? He found a manila envelope, bent and worn. Inside was more impossibilities. Property deeds, 3 of them. Addresses in Connecticut, expensive areas. I recognized some of the town names from when I'd driven passengers to Greenwich and Westport. Houses worth millions. Stock certificates. Chen Technologies, Inc., Chan Pharmaceuticals Holdings, companies I'd never heard of, but the certificates looked official, and the share numbers had a lot of zeros. Bank statements printed on home computer paper dated 3 weeks ago, account balances that made my vision blur. $2.4 million in one account, $800,000 in another, retirement accounts, investment accounts, numbers that didn't make sense for a man who smelled like he slept in subway stations, and photos. Old ones, the kind that had aged from color to sepia. Harold, younger, maybe 50, in an expensive suit, standing in front of a glass office building with his name on it. Harold with his arm around the beautiful Asian woman, both of them smiling at something off camera. Harold with that same woman and 2 children, a boy and a girl, at what looked like a birthday party in a mansion's backyard. Michael stared at these images of a different life, a different Harold. What happened? How did someone fall this far? At the bottom of the envelope, he found a letter. The paper was thick, expensive stationery, but the edges were worn soft from handling. The handwriting was shaky, but deliberate. To whoever finds this, my name is Harold Chin. I'm writing this in case I don't survive whatever happens next. My heart is failing. I know this. I feel it every day. 15 years ago, I was a successful man. I built 2 companies from nothing. I had a wife I loved, 2 children that were my world. A house, respect, everything society tells you matters.
I was also a greedy, selfish bastard.
I made decisions that destroyed people's lives. I cut corners on pharmaceutical testing to rush products to market. People died. I knew they would, and I did it anyway because the profit margin was too good to pass up. When the lawsuits came, I used legal tricks to avoid responsibility. When my business partner tried to blow the whistle, I destroyed his reputation and his career. The law never touched me. I was too rich, had too many lawyers. But karma doesn't need courts. My daughter Emily got sick when she was 10, leukemia. She was in St. Catherine's Children's Hospital for 2 years. The doctors tried everything. She died 3 weeks after her 12th birthday, in my arms, asking me why I couldn't fix it like I fixed everything else. 6 months later, my son James, he'd figured out what I'd done, the people I'd hurt. He confronted me, called me a monster. I told him to leave if he couldn't understand business. He left. Haven't spoken to him in 14 years. My wife Patricia held on for 3 more years. Cancer. The same hospital where Emily died. She told me at the end that she forgave me for everything except wasting the time we had left on being angry. After she died, I had a choice. I could keep being who I was, the man who valued money over people, profit over conscience, or I could change. I gave most of my money away, anonymously, to the families I'd hurt, to medical research, to charities. But I kept this. Call it insurance, call it cowardice. I couldn't quite give up everything. I chose to live on the streets as penance. Every cold night, every hungry day, every moment of suffering, I told myself I deserved it. For Emily, for the people my drugs killed, for Patricia's disappointed eyes. If I die and you find this, the money in this bag needs to go to St. Catherine's Children's Hospital, the cancer ward. The property deeds and stock certificates, there are instructions in my safe deposit box at Manhattan Trust, Box 2847, key attached to this letter. Everything goes to the hospital foundation. No names, no publicity. Just money where it might do some good. If you're reading this, you have a choice to make. You could keep all this. I wouldn't blame you. I don't know your circumstances, but I know this economy, this world. I know how hard it is to be decent when you're drowning. But I'm asking, begging, please finish what I started. Let something good come from my wasted life. Let Emily's name mean something besides another child who died because her father was too busy making money to make safe medicines. I won't know if you do the right thing, but you will. You'll carry that choice for the rest of your life. Choose carefully. Harold Chen, October 15th, 2024. Michael read the letter 3 times. His hands left sweat marks on the paper. A safe deposit box? More money? More assets? This wasn't just the contents of the backpack, this was millions of dollars. Tens of millions, maybe. All of it sitting in his lap in a quiet hospital corner at 1 a.m. He looked at the bundled cash, counted it carefully this time. $73,000. Enough to change everything. Enough to save his mother, help his daughter, give himself room to breathe for the first time in 7 years. And Harold was dying. Massive heart attack, the nurse said. Even if he survived, he clearly wanted this money to go to the hospital. He'd been preparing for this. This was his plan. So really, Michael would just be expediting things, taking what Harold planned to give away anyway. The hospital would still get the property, the stocks, the bank accounts. They'd be fine. They wouldn't even know about this cash. Michael could pay his mother's medical bills tomorrow, in cash. Could see her face when he told her she could get the treatment. Could watch the fear in her eyes, that constant grinding fear of dying because she couldn't afford to live, finally disappear. His daughter could quit her job at Target, focus on school, could transfer to SUNY, maybe even a private college. Could have the future she deserved, instead of the one poverty had assigned her. He could stop driving, could sleep, could be a person again instead of an exhausted machine that converted hours into barely enough dollars. All he had to do was zip up the backpack, walk out of the hospital, and drive away. No one would know. Harold would die never knowing the money was gone. Or if he somehow survived, he'd assume he'd lost it somewhere, or that hospital staff had taken it. Michael would never be suspected. One choice, one moment, his entire life could change. Michael sat there holding $73,000 in his hands and felt something crack open in his chest. He thought about his daughter, not about the money he could give her, but about what he'd taught her. When she was little and they'd found a wallet in a parking lot, thick with cash, he'd made her help him track down the owner. Because that's what good people do, he told her. She was 8 years old, and she'd nodded seriously, and she'd watched him return that wallet and refuse the reward. She was watching him still. Not literally, she was at her dorm, probably asleep or studying for midterms, but she was watching in the way children always watch their parents, building her understanding of what it meant to be a decent person by observing the man who raised her. Could he look her in the eye tomorrow if he took this money? He thought about his mother, not about the money he could give her, but about what he'd taught him. When she was little and they'd found a wallet in a parking lot, thick with cash, he'd made her help him track down the owner. Because that's what good people do. She was watching him still. Not literally, she was at her dorm, probably asleep or studying for midterms, but she was watching in the way children always watch their parents, building their understanding of what it meant to be a decent person by observing the man who raised her. Could he look her in the eye tomorrow if he took this money? He thought about his mother, dying slowly because America decided her life wasn't worth the cost of saving it. She'd worked for 42 years as a nurse, helped thousands of people, saved countless lives, and now she was being killed by medical debt and insurance company algorithms. With this money, he could save her. Wasn't that worth more than abstract morality? Wasn't his actual mother's actual life more important than keeping a promise to a stranger's ghost? But he knew what she'd say. She's the one who taught him those lessons in the first place. She'd rather die honest than live with stolen money. She'd said so much when I had suggested she hide assets to qualify for Medicaid. She told me, "I worked my whole life. I'm not going to lie now." Michael looked at Harold's letter again. The shaky handwriting, the desperate hope that whoever found this would choose mercy over greed. You'll carry that choice for the rest of your life. He would. That was the truth Harold understood. Take this money and it would poison everything. Every good moment would have this underneath it. Every time his daughter smiled at him, every time his mother hugged him, he'd remember. This happiness was built on theft, on stealing from a dying man's last attempt at redemption. He'd become his own kind of Harold, someone who chose money over conscience and spent the rest of his life trying to live with it. But the flip side was just as true. Give this back, and he'd watch his mother die slowly. He'd watch his daughter drown in debt. He'd drive himself into an early grave, another casualty of an economic system designed to grind people like him into dust. Either choice was agony. Either choice had consequences that would echo through the rest of his life. Michael sat in that quiet corner for 27 minutes, the longest 27 minutes of his life. Then he carefully repacked everything. The cash, the documents, the photos, the letter. He zipped the backpack shut, and he stood up.
Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Michael carried the backpack back to the intake desk. His legs felt strange, like they weren't quite his own. The same clerk was there, now dealing with a screaming child who'd gotten a toy car stuck up his nose. She glanced at Michael. "Find anything?" "No emergency contacts," Michael said. "But there's important stuff in here. Documents and other things. It needs to be kept very secure. We'll lock it in the safe, standard procedure."
She reached for it. Michael held on for one extra second. Last chance. Last moment to change his mind. He let go. "Can I wait?" he asked. "For news about him?" The clerk looked surprised. "You can, but it might be a long time. Hours, maybe." "I've got nowhere else to be." That was a lie. He had his apartment, his bed, the sleep he desperately needed. But it was also the truth. Where else could he be except here, seeing this through? He found a seat in the waiting room. It was 1:47 a.m. Around him, the usual emergency room crowd. A woman with a towel wrapped around her bleeding hand, a teenage boy with his arm in a makeshift sling, an elderly man having trouble breathing, a mother with a feverish toddler. The universal democracy of suffering. Everyone waiting their turn. Michael pulled out his phone. 32% battery. He should call someone. But who? His daughter would be asleep. His mother didn't need to hear from him at this hour. She'd just worry. He opened his banking app instead. Checked his balance. $847. Rent was due in 12 days. He had 4 shifts this week. Could maybe make $600 if he was lucky and worked long hours. The math still didn't work. It never did. He could have had $73,000. Instead, he had $847 and a choice he could barely live with. The hours crawled. Michael dozed in the uncomfortable plastic chair, waking every time the emergency room doors slammed open. He watched the sky lighten through the small window, watched the night shift get replaced by the morning shift, watched the emergency room empty and fill and empty again. At 6:23 a.m., a doctor approached him. She looked exhausted. "Are you here for Harold Chen?" Michael stood up too fast, made himself dizzy. "Yes, is he alive? Stable. We got him in time, but it was close." She studied Michael. "You his son?" "No, just his driver." "His driver stayed all night?" Michael shrugged. "Seemed like somebody should." Something shifted in the doctor's expression. Respect, maybe. Or just recognition. One tired person acknowledging another. "He's awake if you want to see him. 5 minutes, that's all." Michael followed her through the secure doors, into the ICU. The room Harold occupied was small and dim, filled with beeping machines and soft hiss of oxygen. Harold looked smaller in the hospital bed, more fragile, like the act of almost dying had aged him another decade. But his eyes were open, and when he saw Michael, something like recognition flickered in them. "You," Harold said. His voice was barely a whisper, destroyed by the breathing tube they had down his throat. "Yeah, me. How you feeling?" "Like shit." A ghost of a smile. "You saved my life. Nurse told me. Fast driving." "Anyone would have done the same." "No. Most people would have dumped me at the curb, called 911, and driven away." Michael didn't answer. He thought about the backpack, currently locked in the hospital safe. "My bag," Harold said, suddenly. "Where? It's safe. The hospital's keeping it secure." Harold studied Michael's face, looking for something. "You opened it." It wasn't a question. Michael felt his face flush. "I was looking for emergency contact information." "And you found more than that." Harold's breathing was labored, each word an effort. "So why are you here? Why aren't you gone?" The question landed like an accusation, or maybe like a test. "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe I'm an idiot." Harold laughed, then winced in pain. "Maybe you're not." He was quiet for a moment, gathering strength. "What stopped you?" I thought about lying, about saying I'd never been tempted, but something about this moment, the hospital dawn, the beeping machines, and the strange intimacy of truth between strangers, made dishonesty impossible. "My daughter," he said finally, "and my mom, and I guess who I want to be versus who poverty is trying to make me." Harold's eyes closed. For a moment I thought he'd passed out. But then, "Tell me about them. Your daughter. Your mother." So Michael did. He talked about Sophia, 19 years old, brilliant and frustrated, trying to build a future with insufficient resources, about how she'd wanted to be a doctor since she was 6 years old, how she'd volunteered at animal shelters and tutored younger kids, how she'd cried when she got in her community college acceptance because it was all they could afford. He talked about his mother, Carmen Torres, who'd worked as a nurse for 42 years and now couldn't afford the healthcare system she'd spent her life supporting, about how she refused to complain even though the chemo made her violently sick, about how she'd still try to cook for him when he visited, even though she could barely stand. "And you?" Harold asked. "What about you?" "What about me?" "What do you want, Michael Torres?" No one had asked me that in so long. I had to think about it. I want to stop drowning. I want one day where I don't have to choose between paying rent or buying groceries. I want to sleep more than 5 hours. I stopped. I want to not be so angry all the time. At the world, at the system, at myself for not being able to fix it. Harold nodded slowly. "I lived your life once. Different details, same fear. Drove a cab when I first came from Taiwan. Worked 18-hour days. Sent money back to my family. Never enough. Always drowning." "What changed?" "I got lucky. Had an idea. Borrowed money. Built a company. Made millions. And then I became the thing I hated. Became the system that drowns people like you. Like I used to be." "Your letter said..." "You read it. Of course you did. So you know. You know what I did. The people I hurt. And you think living on the streets fixed that?" "No. Nothing fixes it, but at least I stopped pretending it didn't matter." Harold's monitors beeped faster. "My daughter, Emily, she was 10 when she got sick. You know what she said to me? When she was dying..."
Michael shook his head. She said, "Daddy, why do only rich kids get to live?" Because she'd seen the other children in that ward. She'd seen the ones whose parents couldn't afford the experimental treatments. She'd seen them die, while she got every possible intervention because I could write any check. Harold's eyes were wet. And even with all my money, she still died. But she died knowing the world was unfair and I was part of making it that way. My baby died thinking her father was a bad person. She was a child. She was right. Harold's voice cracked. The worst part is she was absolutely right. The 5 minutes were up. A nurse appeared at the door. "Mr. Torres, he needs rest." Michael nodded, but before he could leave, Harold grabbed his wrist. The old man's grip was surprisingly strong. "The bag," Harold said urgently. "What I wrote. You'll do it? Please?" Michael looked at this dying man who'd chosen suffering as penance, who'd lived in filth to punish himself for living in luxury while others suffered. "I'll do it," Michael said. "I promise." Harold's grip loosened. His eyes closed. "Thank you," he whispered. Michael walked out of the ICU into the bright morning. He was so tired he felt drunk, but he had one more thing to do. He went back to the intake desk, a different clerk this time, a young man with impressive circles under his eyes. "The patient, Harold Chen, his belongings, I need to speak with someone about them. Social worker, maybe?" "Is there a problem?" "No, the opposite. But there are complications. He has significant assets, and he's left instructions about what should happen to them. I need to make sure it's handled right." The clerk looked skeptical. "Significant assets? Guy came in looking homeless." "I know how he looks, but he has documents, property deeds, bank information. It needs to be handled by someone who understands estates and legal stuff." "Hospital has a social services department. They deal with this kind of thing." He picked up a phone. "Hold on."
20 minutes later, Michael was sitting in an office with a tired woman named Sandra Rodriguez who handled patient social services. He explained everything: the backpack, the letter, the safe deposit box, the instructions. She listened with increasing disbelief. "You're telling me this homeless man has millions in assets?" "Yes. And you found this hours ago and you're just now reporting it?" Michael stopped. What could he say? That he'd spent 30 minutes contemplating theft? "I needed time to process what I'd found." Sandra studied him. "Mr. Torres, you understand we'll need to verify all this, and if Mr. Chen has these assets, there will be legal processes, probate if he dies, power of attorney issues if he lives. It's complicated." "I understand, but his letter was clear. Everything goes to St. Catherine's Children's Hospital, the cancer ward. He wanted it anonymous." "We'll see what we can do." She made notes. "Can you leave your contact information? We might need you to give a statement." Michael left his number. He felt hollow, exhausted beyond measure. He walked back to his car in the parking lot. Sunday morning, 8:47 a.m. The city was waking up, people heading to churches or brunch or whatever normal people did on Sunday mornings, people who slept in real beds and didn't spend their nights making impossible choices in hospital corners. His phone rang. "Sophia." "Dad, where are you? I've been calling." "Sorry, baby. Long night. Had a weird ride. Passenger got sick." "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine." Was he? He didn't know anymore. "What's up?" He hesitated. "I don't want to bother you with this." "Sophia, what?" "My laptop died, completely dead, won't turn on, and I have a paper due Tuesday, and the library computers are always full, and..." She was talking fast, the way she did when she was stressed. "I found a refurbished one online for $300, but I don't get paid until next week, and I was wondering if you could maybe..." $300. Michael looked at his bank balance on his phone. $847. "I'll transfer it today." "Really? Dad, thank you so much. I'll pay you back, I swear." "Don't worry about it. Just get your paper done." After they hung up, Michael sat in his car and did the math. 847 minus $300 left him 547. Rent was $1,850, due in 12 days. Even with 4 good shifts, he'd be short by at least $700. He'd need to ask his landlord for an extension. Again. Or maybe pick up extra shifts somehow, or sell something, though he didn't own anything worth selling. He could have had $73,000. Instead, he had $547 and a promise to a dying man. Michael put his head on the steering wheel and laughed. It came out sounding like crying.
3 weeks passed. Michael drove his shifts, barely slept, lived off dollar menu food, and the edge of financial disaster. He'd gotten his rent extension. The landlord knew he was reliable, always paid eventually. Sophia got her paper done, got an A, and called him excited about her grade. His mother had a bad week. The chemo wasn't working as well anymore. The oncologist mentioned hospice, in a voice that tried to be gentle, but just sounded like defeat. Michael didn't hear anything from the hospital. He assumed Harold had died, that the bureaucratic wheels were turning slowly, processing estates and donations through whatever mysterious channels these things traveled. He tried not to think about the choice he'd made. Some days he felt good about it, clean, moral, the kind of person he wanted his daughter to see. Other days he felt like an idiot who'd thrown away his family's salvation for abstract principles. On a Tuesday afternoon, he got a call from an unknown number. "Mr. Torres, this is Amanda Whitfield from St. Catherine's Hospital Foundation." Michael's heart jumped. "Yes?" "I'm calling about Harold Chen. I understand you were the one who brought him to the hospital?" "That's right. Is he... Did he..." "He's alive. Recovering, actually. Slowly, but he's stable. She paused. "He's been asking for you." Michael pulled over. He was in Manhattan, had just dropped off her passenger. "He wants to see me?" "If you're willing, he's been quite insistent." "When?" "Would this evening work? Around 6?" Michael checked his shift schedule. He had rides booked until 8. "I can be there at 6:30. "Perfect. Ask for me at the main desk. I'll take you up." Michael drove the rest of his shift in a daze. What did Harold want? To thank him? To accuse him of something? Michael's mind spun through possibilities, none of them making sense. On a Tuesday afternoon, he got a call from an unknown number. "Mr. Torres? This is Amanda Whitfield from St. Catherine's Hospital Foundation." Michael's heart jumped. "Yes?" "I'm calling about Harold Chen. I understand you were the one who brought him to the hospital?" "That's right." He's alive. Recovering, actually. Slowly, but he's stable." She paused. "He's been asking for you." Michael pulled over. He was in Manhattan, had just dropped off a passenger. "He wants to see me?" "If you're willing, he's been quite insistent." "When?" "Would this evening work around 6?" Michael checked his shift schedule. He had rides booked until 8. "I can be there at 6:30. "Perfect. Ask for me at the main desk. I'll take you up." Michael drove the rest of his shift in a daze. What did Harold want? To thank him? To accuse him of something? Michael's mind spun through possibilities, none of them making sense. At 6:28 p.m., he walked into St. Catherine's Hospital. Different building from the emergency room, this was the main hospital, all glass and donor plaques, and that specific hospital smell of antiseptic trying to cover something darker. Amanda Whitfield met him at the desk. She was younger than he had expected, maybe 35, dressed in professional clothes that suggested foundation work paid better than driving. "Mr. Torres, thank you for coming." She shook his hand. "Mr. Chen is on the cardiac recovery floor. Before we go up, I need to ask you a few questions." "Okay." They sat in a small consultation room. Amanda pulled out a folder. "The social worker told me about the backpack, about what you found inside." Michael's stomach clenched. "I reported everything. I didn't take anything." "I know. That's actually what I want to talk about." I opened the folder. "Mr. Chen's assets are substantial. The safe deposit box contained additional documents, property holdings worth approximately $18 million, stock portfolios worth another $12 million, bank accounts totaling just over $4 million. All told, his estate is valued at $34.7 million. Michael couldn't breathe. $34 million? He'd held a backpack with $73,000 in cash and thought that was the fortune. It was nothing, a rounding error. "Jesus," he whispered. His letter specified everything should go toward Children's Cancer Ward. "We're in the process of setting up the trust now. It will be the largest single donation in the hospital's history." Amanda looked at him carefully. "But here's the thing, Mr. Torres. You found that backpack. You knew what was in it. And you gave it back." "It wasn't mine." "Legally, there's an argument that it was. Abandoned property, no witnesses, a man with no family who might have died. A lot of people would have made that argument." "I'm not a lot of people." "No, you're not. Which is why Mr. Chen has added something else to his estate plans. He wants to establish a second trust, one that provides full college scholarships for children of rideshare drivers, nurses, and other essential workers who are struggling financially, starting with your daughter." No, I didn't do this for a reward." "I know. That's exactly why he wants to do it. Mr. Torres, Harold Chen spent 15 years punishing himself for his mistakes. But what you did, giving back that money when you desperately needed it, it gave him something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope that people could still be good, that there was still honor in the world." Michael's eyes burned. "I can't accept this. It's too much. It's a scholarship fund, not a personal gift.
Your daughter would have to apply, maintain grades, meet requirements. But yes, she'd be the first recipient. Amanda pulled out more papers. There's more. Mr. Ten wants to fund a microloan program for rideshare drivers trying to transition to other careers. Starting with you, if you want it. I don't understand. He's dying, Mr. Torres. The heart attack did too much damage. He has maybe 6 months, possibly less. And he wants his last act to be creating something good, something that helps people like you. People trying to do the right thing in a system designed to punish them for it. Michael put his hands in his head. The room was spinning. He'd like to see you now, Amanda said gently. If you're ready. Michael wasn't ready, but he stood anyway.
Harold's room was on the 8th floor, private, overlooking the city. He was sitting up in bed, looking better than he had in the ICU, but still frighteningly frail. The machines were gone, but the oxygen tubes remained. His face lit up when Michael entered. "You came." "Of course I came." Michael sat in the visitor's chair. "You're looking better." "I'm dying slower, not the same as better." Harold's smile was gentle. "Amanda told you?" "Yeah, she told me." Michael didn't know where to look. "You can't do this." "I can. I am." "Harold, let me speak. I don't have to breath for arguing." Harold adjusted his oxygen. "When I woke up after the surgery, first thing I asked about was my bag. They told me you'd brought it in, stayed all night, made sure everything was secure. And I knew." "Knew what?" "That you'd opened it. Had to have. And that you'd given it back anyway." Harold's eyes were bright. "Do you know how rare that is? Real integrity? The kind that costs you something." "I just did what anyone should do. But most people don't. I didn't when I had the chance." Harold was quiet for a moment. "I told you about my daughter, Emily. What I didn't tell you was there was a drug that might have saved her. Experimental, not approved yet. I could have gotten it. I had the connections, the money, but I didn't. You know why?" Michael shook his head. "Because I was in the middle of a lawsuit. The FDA was investigating one of my companies for cutting corners on drug trials. If I'd used my influence to get Emily an unapproved drug, it would have looked bad, would have hurt my case. So I let the process take its time. Let bureaucracy and legal strategy dictate the timeline." Harold's voice cracked. "She died 3 weeks before the drug got emergency approval. 3 weeks. Harold, I chose protecting my company over saving my daughter. That's who I was." Harold wiped his eyes with a shaking hand. "You chose giving back money over saving your mother. That's who you are. My mother's still alive. For now. And that scholarship, that loan program, maybe it gives you the margin to keep her that way a little longer. Maybe it doesn't. But either way, you made the hard choice, the right one." Michael felt something break loose in his chest. "I wanted to keep it," he admitted. "God, I wanted to. I sat there for almost half an hour convincing myself why I should, all the good I could do with it, all the people it would help. But you didn't. No. Why not?" I thought about my daughter's face when I'd returned that wallet in the parking lot so many years ago, about my mother refusing to lie to qualify for Medicaid, about the long chain of small choices that had built the person I was. Because I'd have to live with it. Every day. Every good thing that money bought would be poisoned by how I got it. And I'd teach my daughter that everything I'd told her about honor and integrity was bullshit, that it all goes away when things get hard enough. Harold nodded. "That's it. That's exactly it. You can't buy peace with stolen money.
I learned that too late. Gave away everything I stole, legally but still stolen. And it didn't matter. Couldn't forgive myself. But watching you make the right choice, that's given me something. Call it redemption by proxy. Your money is helping people now. That's real. Because you gave me the chance. If you'd taken that backpack, I'd have died thinking I was right, that everyone's a hypocrite when the price is right. You proved me wrong. They sat in silence for a while. Outside the window, the city lights were coming on. Millions of people making millions of choices, most of them small, some of them defining. The scholarship, Michael said. You're serious about this? Completely. Your daughter can start applying to universities, real ones, not just community college. Michael felt tears on his face. She wants to be a doctor. Then she'll be a doctor, a good one, I bet, with a father who taught her what integrity looks like. And the loan program? What would you do if you could stop driving? I'd thought about this a lot over the past 3 weeks. I'd train as an EMT, maybe a paramedic eventually. I like helping people. I'm good in emergencies. And the pay is better than rideshare. Better benefits. Then do it. Program will cover your training, living expenses while you study, everything. 6 months from now, you could be working ambulances instead of driving drunks home from bars. Why are you doing this? Because I'm dying and I have too much money and not enough time. Harold smiled. And because you gave me something priceless. You reminded me that the world still has people like you in it. People who choose right over easy. I'm not special. You're not. That's the point. You're just a regular guy trying to do right by his family. But you made the hard choice anyway. If that's not special, I don't know what is. Amanda knocked and entered. I'm sorry, but Mr. Chen needs to rest. Michael stood. Harold grabbed his hand. Thank you, Harold said, for everything. For getting me here, for staying, for being who you are. Thank you, Michael managed, for all of this. I don't have words. You don't need words. Just promise me something. Anything. Don't tell your daughter about the temptation. Don't tell her you almost took the money. Just let her see the man who gave it back. Let that be the story. Michael understood. Harold didn't want to taint the lesson with the struggle. Didn't want Sophia to know how close her father had come to choosing differently. I promise. In the elevator going down, Michael called Sophia. She answered on the second ring. Hey, Den, what's up? You sitting down? Why? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's... Sophia, I need you to start looking at 4-year universities. Any school you want. Full scholarship. Everything covered. Silence. Then, Dad, what are you talking about?
I'll explain everything. But baby, you're going to be a doctor. A real doctor, not a dream deferred. You're going to do it. She started crying. Michael started crying. They stayed on the phone for 20 minutes, Sophia asking questions faster than Michael could answer, both of them laughing and crying and planning a future that had seemed impossible that morning. When they finally hung up, Michael sat in his car in the hospital parking lot and looked at his life. He still had $547 in his bank account, still had rent problems and his mother's medical bills and a car that needed new brakes. Nothing had changed in the immediate material sense. But everything had changed. His daughter had a future, he had a path forward, and he had the knowledge that when tested, when offered an easy way out, he'd chosen to be the man he wanted to be, the man his daughter thought he was. 5 months later, Michael discovers a truth that will shatter everything he believed about Harold's generosity and force him to make one final, impossible choice.
5 months later, Michael was 2 weeks from graduating from his EMT training program. Sophia had been accepted to Cornell, her dream school, and would start in the fall. His mother was in a clinical trial for a new treatment, paid for through a combination of the trial funding and a mysterious anonymous donor that Michael strongly suspected was connected to Harold's foundation. Harold had died in January, quiet, in his sleep, in a private hospice room paid for by his own estate. Michael had gone to the memorial service, a small affair attended by hospital administrators, a few foundation people, and Michael. No family, no friends from Harold's old life. The scholarship fund was established. The loan program was helping 12 drivers get training for new careers. Harold's $34 million was doing exactly what he'd wanted, creating ripples of good in the world. Michael should have been happy. He was happy, mostly, but something nagged at him, some detail he couldn't quite identify. It started with a letter that arrived at his apartment on a Tuesday in March. No return address. Inside, a handwritten note. Mr. Torres, you don't know me, but I know about you, about the backpack, the money, the choice you made. I need to speak with you about Harold Chen. There are things you don't know, things that change everything. Meet me at Riverside Park, 112th Street entrance, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. This is important. James Chen. Harold's son, the one who'd left 14 years ago and never came back. Michael's first instinct was to ignore it. Harold was dead, the money was distributed, the story was over. What could James possibly tell him that would matter now? But curiosity won. On Wednesday, he called in sick to his training and took the subway to Riverside Park. James Chen was standing by the river when Michael arrived. He was in his 40s, well-dressed, successful-looking. He had Harold's eyes. Mr. Torres, James extended his hand. Thank you for coming. What's this about? My father, and a lie I need to correct. James gestured to a bench. Can we sit? They sat. James was quiet for a long moment, staring at the river. Then, my father didn't live on the streets as penance. What? The story he told you, the guilt, the self-punishment, the redemption, it's not exactly true. James pulled out a folder. My father had early onset Alzheimer's. It was diagnosed 8 years ago. It progressed slowly at first, then faster. Michael felt cold. I don't understand. 5 years ago, he had an episode. Walked out of his apartment one night confused. Couldn't remember where he lived. By the time we found him, I say the private investigators I'd hired to keep tabs on him, he'd been on the streets for 3 days. And something in his brain broke, or maybe fixed. He decided that's where he belonged. But the letter was written during a moment of clarity. He had them sometimes. The guilt was real. What he did to those people, to my sister, to my mother, all real. But the choice to live on the streets wasn't noble penance. It was cognitive decline combined with untreated depression and guilt that found an outlet in self-destruction. Michael's stomach churned. He seemed coherent, rational. He was, mostly. Alzheimer's is weird. It's not like the movies. He could still function, still hold conversations, but his judgment was impaired. His decision-making was compromised. James opened the folder. I tried to get conservatorship to put him in a care facility, but he'd seen it coming, had set up trusts with stipulations that prevented anyone from overriding his wishes unless he was completely incapacitated. And he never quite crossed that legal threshold. Why are you telling me this? Because that scholarship fund, that loan program, they're real. The money's real. But the intent behind them? James looked at Michael. That wasn't my father in his right mind. That was Alzheimer's influenced decision-making, triggered by meeting you. He wanted to help people. What's wrong with that? Nothing, except... James pulled out more documents. My father had a will, a proper one, written 10 years ago, before the Alzheimer's diagnosis. In it, he left everything, and I mean everything, to a foundation to be set up in my sister Emily's name. Not to St. Catherine's, specifically to a broader foundation that would fund pediatric cancer research nationwide. Millions of children, not just one hospital.
Michael's mouth was dry. But he changed his mind. No, he lost his mind. There's a difference. James' voice was gentle but firm. Mr. Torres, I know this hurts. I know you needed that scholarship, that loan. But $34 million used the way my father originally intended could save thousands of lives. The research it could fund, the treatments it could develop, that's his real legacy, not a feel-good story about redemption.
Michael stood up. He was lucid. He knew what he was doing. Did he? Or did he make an emotional, impulsive decision because you happened to be kind to him? James stood too. I've read the medical records. The week you met him, he'd been off his medications for a month, living on the streets, not taking care of himself. He was in cognitive decline. The lawyers approved the trust. They're being challenged, and they'll lose. I have 8 years of medical documentation proving progressive dementia. James's voice softened. I'm sorry. I really am. But this isn't about you. It's about what my father would have wanted if he'd been in his right mind. It's about Emily and honoring her properly. Michael felt something crumbling inside him. So all of it, the scholarship, the program, Sophia's future, will be revoked. The court will likely rule in the next few weeks. Original will sans, later amendments voided due to incapacity. James looked genuinely sorry. I wanted to tell you personally, so you'd know why, so you wouldn't think I was just being greedy. Aren't you? No, I don't need the money. I'm a neurosurgeon. I do fine. But I need my sister's memory to mean something real. $34 million into research could lead to breakthroughs, could mean other fathers don't lose their daughters to leukemia. That's worth more than scholarships for a few dozen kids, no matter how deserving. Michael wanted to argue, wanted to rage, but the logic was sound. The medical evidence was apparently clear. Harold had been impaired, and the greater good, actual cancer research versus individual scholarships, was hard to dispute. When? Michael asked. When will the court rule? Hearing is in 10 days, ruling probably a week after that. James handed him a card. My lawyer's information. If you want to contest it, you have that right. But, Mr. Torres, you're going to lose. The evidence is overwhelming. James walked away, leaving Michael on the bench by the river. Michael sat there for an hour. Then he went home and didn't tell anyone. Not Sophia, who was planning her Cornell wardrobe. Not his mother, who was responding well to the trial. Not his instructors, who kept congratulating him on having his life together. For 3 days, he said nothing. He went through the motions, classes, studying, family dinners, where everyone talked about bright futures. On the 4th day, he drove to the cemetery where Harold was buried. Simple grave, no fancy monument, just his name and dates and a line from his letter. Let something good come from my wasted life. Michael stood there as the sun set. You bastard, he said to the gravestone. You couldn't just be a simple redemption story. Had to be complicated, had to be ambiguous. The stone didn't answer. Michael thought about the choice he'd made 5 months ago, giving back the money, choosing integrity over survival. Everyone had told him it was the right choice, noble, good. But what if it all been based on a lie? Not a deliberate lie, but the confused desires of a sick mind. What if his noble choice had actually prevented greater good, all that research money going to a single hospital's pet projects instead of nationwide research? And now another choice. Contest the will change, fight for Sophia's scholarship. It would cost money he didn't have, time he didn't have, and he'd almost certainly lose anyway. Or let it go. Except that sometimes doing the right thing doesn't lead to rewards, that sometimes the universe just takes, and there's no cosmic justice to balance the scales. Michael stood at Harold's grave until it was full dark. Then he went home and called Sophia. Dad, you okay? You sound weird. I need to tell you something. About the scholarship? About how I got it? What do you mean? So he told her. Everything. The ride, the backpack, the money, the 30 minutes he'd spent contemplating theft, the choice he'd made, Harold's gratitude, the scholarship that came from it. And now the challenge to the will, the Alzheimer's diagnosis, the likelihood that it would all be taken away. When he finished, there was silence. Sophia? You almost kept the money? Her voice was small. Yes. But you didn't? No. Why not? Because of you. Because I wanted you to have a father you could be proud of. Because I wanted to be the man you thought I was. More silence. Then, Dad, I've always been proud of you. You work harder than anyone I know. You gave up everything to raise me after Mom left. You never complained, you never gave up. You think I need you to be perfect? I need you to be human. I need you to struggle and choose right anyway. That's the lesson. The scholarship? Fuck the scholarship. Sophia's voice was fierce. I'll get loans, I'll work, I'll figure it out. But I have a father who, when tested, gave back money he desperately needed. That's worth more than Cornell. Michael was crying now, too. I wanted to give you everything. You gave me you. The real you? That's everything. They talked for another hour. Made plans, contingency plans. Sophia said she'd take a gap year if needed, work and save, reapply when they could afford it. Michael said no. We'd figure out loans, financial aid, something. Neither of them mentioned that it might not be enough, that some gaps are too wide for hard work to bridge. The next day, Michael went to Amanda Whitfield's office at the foundation. I heard, she said before he could speak. James Chen's lawyers contacted us. They're right, Michael. Harold was impaired. We should have caught it. Should have required more thorough medical evaluation before accepting such a large trust change. What happens now? Court will likely rule for the original will. Money goes to the Emily Chen Foundation for Cancer Research. Our hospital will get some, but most will be distributed nationwide. She looked genuinely sad. I'm sorry. We had already started processing your daughter's scholarship. I know. Michael sat down. I need to ask you something. Off the record? Okay. If you were me, if you'd made the choice I made, for the reasons I made it, would you feel like you'd been played? Like you'd sacrificed for nothing? Amanda thought about it. Did you give back the money because you expected a reward? No. Did you do it because you thought Harold was perfectly rational and competent? I did it because it wasn't mine. Because taking it would have made me someone I didn't want to be. Then you weren't played. The circumstances around Harold's gratitude don't change the fact of your choice. You had $73,000 in your hands. Your mother was dying. Your daughter was drowning in limited options, and you gave it back anyway. Amanda leaned forward. That still means something, even if the reward gets taken away. Does it? Or am I just a sucker who gave up his family's future for abstract morality? Can I tell you something? Amanda pulled out her own phone, showed him a photo. 2 kids, maybe 8 and 10. My daughters. Their father walked out when they were babies. I raised them alone on a nonprofit salary. We were poor, are still poor by most standards. Why are you telling me this? Because 3 years ago, I was in a position to embezzle from the foundation. It would have been easy. I knew the systems, knew where the weaknesses were. I could have taken enough to change our lives, and no one would have known for years. She put the phone away. I didn't do it. Not because I expected a reward, because I wanted my daughters to have a mother who didn't steal, even when we needed it. Did that choice pay off? We still struggle, but my daughters know their mother has integrity. They know that means something. Maybe that's the payoff. She smiled sadly. Or maybe I'm just another sucker trying to justify a stupid choice. Michael left her office with no answers, just more questions. The court hearing happened. Michael didn't attend. 2 weeks later, the ruling came. James Chen's challenge was upheld. Harold had been demonstrably impaired when he made the trust changes. Original will would stand. All specific bequests, including the scholarship fund and driver loan program, were voided. The Emily Chen Foundation would receive $34.7 million for pediatric cancer research. Michael's daughter would not be going to Cornell. Michael's EMT training would be completed. He'd make it through, but the loan forgiveness program was gone. He'd have to repay every dollar. His mother's clinical trial continued, but only because it was a trial. When it ended, the experimental treatment would cost more than they could afford. Everything was back to where it started. Except now, Michael knew exactly what he'd given up, knew exactly what price his integrity had cost.
Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss these. Just click to watch and don't forget to subscribe.